I thought that girl at the end of the movie, the Mother Nature girl, I thought that she was like Fantasia. And when I was a kid, whenever I heard of Fantasia, I would see like the poster, like just the 2000 poster of that face. Because I didn't know about like the earlier one from like, like the 40s or whatever. So I just thought like, oh, there's a movie called Fantasia about a girl named Fantasia.
Fantasia 2000.
Yeah, Fantasia 2000. And she's got green hair. And it's like, we got to go find out what's going on with Fantasia. All right, and we are here again, and we are back again. As always, I'm Matt.
I'm Drew.
And this is the Back Again podcast. This is our sequel podcast. This is where we look at specific sequels from the past and see if they overall are worth going back again. And today is a special episode because today is our final episode of the first season of the Back Again podcast. As you know, we've been doing our Disney animated sequels, and today this is it.
We're bringing it to a close.
We're bringing it home. We are doing a follow-up to the 1940 Fantasia, and we are doing Fantasia 2000. Before we get started, I think it's a good movie to kind of bring this to a close because out of our list, we've watched kind of every different variation of a Disney sequel, I'd say. We've gotten a good kind of a chunk of it. We had some good ones, we had some bad ones, we had some good intentions, we had some bad intentions. And now with this one, which is interesting, is that this isn't beholden to a narrative structure because it is just a series of songs from a concert hall that they're mixing in with animation.
So I was looking forward to this, and I had actually opted to make this the season closer because this was the only sequel that I had seen prior to us doing this podcast. So yeah, I don't want to get too much into it right now, but needless to say, I like this movie a lot. So yeah, this is going to be the breakdown for Fantasia 2000. So the first one, I'll tell you what, first thing I can respect right off the bat about this movie is they go right into it. As we kind of get through, I would call it the opening credits because we flash the title right after that. We go right into our first piece, which is Symphony Number 5 by Ludwig van Beethoven. It's the one with all of they look like paper doves or paper butterflies.
Yeah, butterflies,
yeah. And it's just it's almost a ballet of positive, colorful butterflies that are being harassed and chased to the song by darker versions of themselves.
Which is kind of an ongoing theme that we'll kind of see throughout the rest of this movie. There always seems to be kind of like a light side and a dark side, and the dark side's trying to take out the light side, which, Disney never does that again.
It's a very abstract piece. It ends on a positive note. The song is very recognizable. I think it's a very smart one for them to open up on. But shortly after that, we get into our first host piece, which is Steve Martin introducing what Fantasia is. And I think he does a very good job. You really just need to hear him say the concert feature, which is what they had originally kind of dubbed Fantasia back when they did the original in 1940, before changing the name to Fantasia. So Steve Martin introduces the feature as a whole, and we get into our second number, which is Pines of Rome by Ottorino Respighi. In this piece, there is a pod of whales that have, I don't want to say they've learned to fly, but they've been imbued with flight, and they are beginning to ascend into the sky. But one of the pods, a young calf, goes and harasses a number of birds because now they both share the sky. And the birds begin chasing the young calf into a ice cavern where it becomes trapped, where it's unable to ascend to the sky, and where it's cut off physically from its parents, who we can see are trying to get to it. With some nonverbal help and cues from its parents, the calf is able to find a ray of light that helps it ascend out of the ice cavern, where it's able to reunite with its parents and the entire pod, in fact, and they all ascend through the clouds into the sky, and it's
like space afterlife.
It's very abstract. Yeah. I always just saw it as another ocean and like almost like a cycle, but this time around, because I've seen this movie multiple times, I saw it much more as like the atmosphere. Yeah, they're breaking into outer space. After the second piece, we are taken back to a host segment where Quincy Jones introduces our third piece, Rhapsody in Blue by George Gershwin. And what's interesting about this piece is that they use a specific style of animation that is, I believe it's different for Disney, because Disney likes their style a lot and they like sticking to it and they like being known by it. But in this piece, they use animation inspired or drawn directly by Al Hirschfeld. In this piece, I'm going to try not to spend too too much time on this piece because it is rather long. There's a lot of stuff happening. There are 4 different character arcs where we explore a day in the life of 4 different residents of, I believe it's Chicago, in the 1930s. It's definitely during the Great Depression. A down on his luck worker who is trying to find money or find a job, trying to be successful. A young man who is working an unfulfilling job, and I realized this going around how lately it's revealed, but who is an aspiring musician. An older man who is in an unhappy relationship and wants freedom, essentially.
He just wants to dance.
He just wants to dance. And a young girl who just wants to be with her parents, and her parents are too busy and don't have the time. Through a series of events, their lives intersect and all end up at the end of the day for the best, even though none of them know that they have had such a heavy impact on each other's lives. I think this was one of the more emotionally resonating ones, especially because you did have the smattering of 4 different characters that just kind of up your odds of one that you can connect to. So yeah, I like this one a lot. This is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
After the 3rd piece, we are taken back to a host segment with Bette Midler, who, interestingly enough, doesn't really go straight into introducing the next piece. She kind of introduces some rejected concepts, which was interesting. Just kind of a reference. There was one that was going to be inspired by Ride of the Valkyries, one inspired by the works of Salvador Dali, a bug ballet, which they didn't really spend too much time on, and one inspired by the polka. After we kind of dance around the idea of the rejected premises and kind of how far they got, she does introduce the 4th piece, which is Piano Concerto No. 2 Allegro Opus 102 by Dmitri Shostakovich. This is the Steadfast Tin Soldier one. It's inspired by a short story written by Hans Christian Andersen. Hans Christian Andersen also wrote the short story that inspired The Little Mermaid, The Emperor's New Groove, and Frozen. So in this one, we see a little tin soldier, as alluded to in the title, who is missing a leg. He is going about his business as toys often do when there are no children in the room, just kind of, coming alive and whatnot. And he sees a beautiful girl who also seems to only have one leg. And he gets the courage to go up and approach her because they have something to talk about. And even though he is successful in flirting, he does find out to his dismay that she does in fact have 2 legs. Though he is put out, there's not much time for him to react, for the villain shows himself a jack-in-the-box who looks like a court jester for some reason, who is also interested in the ballerina.
Interested in the ballerina is kind of like a very small way to put it. He wants to attack the ballerina.
He wants her a lot. There is a confrontation and the tin soldier gets knocked out the window. He gets knocked down a drain in the rain onto a wooden ship and then flies through a sewer tunnel while being hounded by rats. It's all a very intense sequence, and the music, I don't know if you want to play some of the music right here, is very pivotal to the whole sequence. Okay.
And when after he got eaten by the fish, I thought the only way he's going to get back into that room is if, by somehow that fish gets captured, they purchase the fish, and it comes back to the house. And then what do you think happens? The fish gets captured, they get purchased, it gets put in the house, and then it falls immediately out of the mouth, and then the kid picks it up and he puts it in the box.
Without saying anything.
Yeah, and then he's back in town for basically
round 2.
Yeah, Jack in the Box fight round 2.
Ding ding ding. This time he is successful during the climactic pivotal moment of the musical piece, and he gets the girl at the end while the Jack in the Box burns. After that piece, we go to a host segment, very quick one, hosted by James Earl Jones, who introduces Carnival of the Animals finale by Camille Saint-Saëns.
Is this the flamingo one?
Yeah, this is the flamingo one.
Okay, I like this one a lot.
Yeah. So one flamingo's trying to have fun. He's got a bunch of yo-yos in order to have fun, but the other flamingos just want him to be part of the flock, and that involves, I don't, gliding across the water or something. Doing flamingo stuff.
Yeah.
They use violent means to try to get him to assimilate, but he refuses.
He's got more yo-yos.
He's got more yo-yos than they have authority. So he is able to win in the end, and it's a happy ending. I think this is my dad's favorite because he's got a frame from one of the illustrations.
Well, it's funny you should say that, ladies and gentlemen. Andrew's dad.
So after the Carnival of the Animals, we have Penn and Teller show up to do some sight gags, which I always liked, especially when I was a kid. What was interesting about this one was I liked the host piece more than the actual musical piece itself, because in this instance, we have a rehash of one of the original pieces, which is The Sorcerer's Apprentice, starring Mickey Mouse. It's a classic, it's good, but it's definitely not my favorite in this feature. So just to wrap things up with Sorcerer's Apprentice, I don't want to spend too much time on it, especially because it is technically an unaltered piece from the original, and this is a sequel podcast. So next up is the host segment for the 7th piece, which is introduced by Maestro James Levine. And it has a little animated shtick with Mickey and Donald getting into, some hijinks while they're trying to get set up for the next piece. The next piece is Pomp and Circumstance by Edward Elgar. But in this one, we essentially have the story of Noah's Ark, with Donald Duck and Daisy Duck being assistants to Noah as he builds his ark, gets all the animals rounded up, gets them to safety on the seas of the flooded world, and then, to the new land.
Yeah, I like the love story with them both thinking that that they died horribly.
That's the source of the drama for this one.
In the storm, but then they find out that they're both alive and like they're in love. Not super crazy about the Noah's Ark stuff. It was kind of interesting seeing Disney do a religious story. So I wasn't a big fan of that. However, it was still cute that they worked in Donald. But I don't really have anything to say about this piece.
I'm fine with it being a religious story. What about Evan Almighty?
Well,
that's what they did.
But that's different, dude. That's got John Goodman in it. And if you know anything about this podcast, is that you get flying colors if you have John Goodman in your movie.
After Pomp and Circumstance, we get to our final piece introduced by Angela Lansbury, who wraps things up as she does.
Golden Girls.
The 8th piece is The Firebird Suite by Igor Stravinsky. And this one tells the story of a nature spirit who is...
I think she is awoken by the elk, and I think that's kind of like a metaphor for the life on Earth and Mother Nature, like both kind of waking up at the same time, or, there is not one without the other, if I had to try to get kind of deep about it. Welcome back to another episode of Matt Gets Deep about Fantasia.
The elk wakes her up. She begins kind of doing her spring thing, as spirits like her do. Spreading life, spreading green, all happiness and joy, until she reaches a point where her green don't go. And she's very concerned about this and soon begins investigating. Whatever it is, the meteor, or the malign entity, awakens and begins destroying all of the spirit's creation before ultimately destroying her. She is not completely lost, however, as the elk, who somehow survived, it's not really shown how he survives, kind of breathes life back into her a little bit and is able to get her up, just barely surviving.
Yeah, and then after that, while she's on the elk, she starts to cry because she's so traumatized from this experience, and she realizes that her tears are creating life again. So this kind of rejuvenates her. She sets off into the sky, and then she makes it rain, which then creates life everywhere again. And then your kind of last shot is all the grass is returned, and the elk is looking out saying, "That's my girl."
Music crescendos, and then it essentially just doesn't smash the credits, but we fade the credits. So what do you want to talk about before we really go into our rankings? There's not really plot or character. I don't really think anything.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say is that, there's not really a lot to critique about this. If I had to critique one thing, it would be the host segments. And the only thing that just felt weird about them, besides obviously it does feel like, a production that's taking place. But it also felt like something you would watch like in a museum. Like if I had to go to a trip to like the Grammys or something like that, there would be all these video segments of celebrities doing kind of cheesy bits while also introducing kind of the next piece. So that was the only thing that felt dated to me, because it was just very like, oh, I remember when we only had one television, and Steve Martin's coming out, and he's doing a wacky thing and stuff. But I think you can kind of skip past those parts and then you can just get back to the music. But I enjoyed pretty much every segment, and I think as a whole I enjoyed it more than the original, because the original they really just focus on like animals and objects and their kind of narratives, even though there's not a lot of narratives. With this one, it's mostly like animals and people, and the narratives are a lot more cohesive and they're a lot more engaging, and they actually try to build some kind of mini story out of it. And I think that addition really helped not only give it a reason why they're making this, but also like helped just entertainment wise, just upon viewership. Like I just thought it was interesting and stronger, and I definitely enjoyed watching this one more than the first one.
The only thing I'll say about this is definitely the one that I'll be judging a lot more based on an emotional response, because like I said, I had grown up with it, than on like a analytical response, as I did with all these other sequels. I think just about every segment except for Carnival of the Animals and Sorcerer's Apprentice have a really strong emotional beat that I can just like connect to every single time I watch it. Yeah.
So with that being said, let's go into our season finale of our 3 questions that go to an overall answer of worth going back again. And as always, the first question is, does it work as a sequel? And I'll start it off, and I will say that it does work as a sequel. And the only things that don't work in this movie is probably just the host introductions to things because it just looks super hacky and cheesy. But as far as the animation, the music, the narrative, and just kind of a continuation or an expansion on what they're trying to do, I do think it works as a sequel.
I think it does work as a sequel, but I think it primarily works on merits of the content itself, not necessarily was now a good time to do a sequel, but did something like this need to be a sequel? And you can just go back to the historical roots of this where they had always intended to make sequels of this. I don't know if you would call them sequels, but they had always intended to make it a continuously changing experience.
Yeah, they mentioned something at the top, right?
Exactly, yeah. They had always intended to go back and do other musical pieces set to other animation styles, but they never had until now. It was Walt Disney's vision to do this multiple times, but this was the only time they were actually able to do it successfully.
So yeah, so it sounds like it's going to be 2 check marks for us right off the bat.
Yeah.
So the second question is it enjoyable / entertaining?
I'll start off this one. For a lot of the reasons I said for the first one, this is enjoyable / entertaining. When you have an interesting concept on its face, like Fantasia, which not a lot of people know about, I feel like, and Fantasia is such a unique idea, but no one seems to know about Fantasia, at least a lot of the people I talk to. So when you take an interesting, at least to me, idea like that, you inject effective storytelling into it, that's all you really need to be enjoyable / entertaining. The stories don't have to be anything special. I'll admit, I'll straight up say they don't have to adhere to all of the maybe strict rules that we kind of expect from other traditional Disney sequels, but those are traditional narratives. So there are structures and rules that they need to follow. These are abstract narratives, so they have the leniency or they have the authority to kind of deviate from those rules as long as the animators and the storytellers are successful. And like I said, in this case, we see time after time that they are.
Yeah, I also think it's enjoyable / entertaining. And even just to comment on what you just said, Disney has always lived in this kind of short story universe. That's like their bread and butter.
Mm-hmm.
So especially with this sequel, like I would expect them to knock out these kind of short stories, because if they can't get that down,
mm-hmm.
That's kind of where they live all the time. Whereas with their narratives, like, it kind of varies across the board. What's interesting about this sequel versus the other sequels is a lot of them were coming out in the 2000s, like we said. And the animation with this one is really good. And when you look at how much effort they put into this animation, I don't know how you could watch this and not be entertained or not find it enjoyable. And I really feel the effort being put into it, because let's say you take this versus like a Little Mermaid 2, like, the animation and the effort is not put in there. So for the effort alone, I will say is enjoyable / entertaining. But then also on a personal level, I just think that the stories work, and I think that the arcs work, and I think the emotional themes that they're trying to do, besides the Noah's Ark one, are interesting. And they really ended on a strong one with the Mother Nature kind of being attacked and having that kind of haunting scene, and then kind of giving rebirth to all the grass and to all the life on Earth. And just overall, I just think that there's a lot more depth with this sequel, and it makes it enjoyable and entertaining for all ages involved. So that's going to be 2 check marks again. So that's going to be 4 check marks so far. So the last question is, does it need to exist? And I'll start it off. And I think that this question, when we started this podcast, we were thinking of these questions, I feel like, does it need to exist? Oh, is that like a really kind of harsh way that you're asking it? And I think it's understandable to ask that, because when you look at how many sequels just within the Disney animated franchise there are so many, and there are so many that there is no effort put into them, and the stories don't go anywhere, and the characters become one note, and basically everything that you love from that classic slowly gets kind of stripped away as they go on and on. So when we talk about does it need to exist, I think we're also talking about, does this have to be shown to people? And people's time is valuable. And if you're listening to this podcast, we appreciate your time. So in regards to these sequels, I do think that this movie needs to exist. I think this movie is worth your time. I think that this movie brings something to the table that not only kind of reminds you about the original, but then it kind of makes you think about what else we can do and how we can go further. And in regards to where they kind of leave everything off, I wouldn't mind seeing a third Fantasia, and I wouldn't mind if they continued this kind of series of songs and animated shorts to combine into some kind of ultimate experience. So yeah, I'm a fan of the movie. I think that besides those 2 things that I mentioned, I think that it's a really good time, and I think it needs to exist.
I definitely think it needs to exist. When you have an idea like this where everything is just lightning in a bottle and all you really need to do is just inject consistent, good, simple storytelling into it, you really have something that I think is not only successful, but has legs. I think it's something that you could make more of. And honestly, I think it's a shame that there isn't more of this. This is the first time that I think there needs to be more than just a sequel. I think there either needs to be multiple sequels as Disney intended, or I think it would work very well in kind of a short format TV show, especially with all of the ideas that Disney's kind of throwing at Disney Plus right now. I think that like 30 to 40 minute kind of mini concert session with maybe like 4 or 5 animated pieces, all of them kind of centered around like a specific theme maybe, and then bringing back the host segments but making them actually good. And it's a weird feeling to really kind of like be going through all of these sequels and just kind of like, do these need to exist? And then finally getting to one where it's like, why aren't there more of these?
Yeah.
And it's kind of mind-boggling that there aren't more of them.
And if you're keeping score at home, this is going to be a first time on this podcast. And what a way to close out the season. With 6 checks, no X's, it's going to get 1 giant check as worth going back, ... again.
Well deserved.
Yeah, it's a good way to close it out. You know, I'm glad we watched this movie. And, you know, it's almost like this movie knew what we had to go through this season because what's the runtime?
70 minutes.
Yeah, it's quick. And it was like, guys, we'll take care of this for you. Just sit back and then we're going to get through this. And I believe even you pointed out, like, how long are the credits?
The credits, it's billed at like 75 minutes.
Yeah.
And then the credits are like, I think over 5 minutes.
Okay.
Because they do a lot. There's a lot of people who worked on this movie. They do a lot for each different piece.
Yeah. So that's going to be a wrap on Fantasia 2000. That's going to be a wrap on season 1 of the Back Again podcast with visuals. And we just want to thank everyone for listening. We're going to do one more episode where we rank the 12 Disney animated sequels that we watched from worst to best. If you listen to the season, you can probably guess which one is going to be worst on the list. And at the end of that episode, we're going to make our announcement of what we're going to do for season 2 of the Back Again podcast. So make sure that you listen to the next episode after this so you can find out our ranking of the season as a whole and also what we're going to be doing for season 2. And outside of that, guys, you know, make sure you like, subscribe, that you comment below. It's been a long season, but it's been a good season. And make sure you check out those episodes. Please feel free to reach out. Tell us what you think of this Disney sequel verse. Which movies do you think we missed that we should have watched instead? But outside of that, we will see you here again, back again for our ranking episode. And you got anything else to add, Drew?
Can't wait.
All right. And we will see you next time.